We now enter the sacred Triduum with Holy Thursday. And I was able to visit that upper room where Jesus came with his apostles to celebrate the Last Supper, which, as we know, was the first Mass, the first time that Jesus gave us his body and blood under the appearances of bread and wine. He gave that to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat, for this is my body, which will be given up for you." And also, during the dialogue with his apostles at the Last Supper, Jesus tells us to remain with him. Unless we remain with him, we will not bear any fruit, he says. He is the vine and we are the branches. What happens if you cut a branch off from a vine? Well, it dies, it withers and dies. And so too, if we ever cut ourselves off from the vine, which is Christ, we wither and die. Our lives become hollow and empty. And I was so privileged to be able to come to this place several times throughout our week here, just to pray in that upper room where Jesus was with his disciples, not only at the Last Supper, but also at Pentecost and on the evening of Easter Sunday, when he said to them, he breathed on them and he said, "Whose sins you forgive are forgiven. Receive the Holy Spirit." So it's just an amazing thing to be able to pray here. This building is not original. It was built by the Crusaders in the Middle Ages, but it's believed that it was built on the exact location of the upper room where Jesus would often come with his disciples. And then we read in Scripture that after the Last Supper, Jesus went to a place to pray, a place that he often would go to pray. And it's at the base of the Mount of Olives, called the Garden of Gethsemane. And here he prayed. He prayed that this chalice could pass. In other words, he knew what was coming the next day on Good Friday. He knew of his death. And inside he was fearful. He really did become one of us. He really did become human. And so just as we are afraid of things, Jesus in his heart, there was a part of him that was afraid to die. And yet he prayed there, "Not my will, but your will be done." Not my will, but your will be done. And then outside this church here, this church is built, I'll say first, this church is built upon the rock where Jesus prayed at Gethsemane. This here is the rock where Jesus prayed, where it says that he was in such agony that his sweat became as drops of blood. His blood stained this rock right before us here. And Jesus comes out to the garden before us, and he finds his disciples asleep. There were 3 disciples that he asked to come all the way here with him, Peter, James, and John, and they are asleep. He says, "Could you not have waited with me for 1 hour? Could you not have kept watch for 1 hour?" The story continues that Judas knew where Jesus was. Oftentimes, Jesus came to this Garden of Gethsemane with his disciples to pray. And so Judas, after he left the Last Supper, went and got the high priests and their soldiers and came here to the Garden of Gethsemane to arrest Jesus. They were looking for an out-of-the-way place. They couldn't arrest Jesus in public because the people would be too upset, too angry. They wouldn't allow Jesus to be arrested in public. And so Judas comes here to Jesus after dark at night when he was alone. His disciples have fallen asleep. And it is here that he hands him over to the high priest and to their soldiers. And now let's go back up to Dominus Flavit, that place on the Mount of Olives where Jesus wept. And from here you can see a great view of the city. At the base of this hill is the Garden of Gethsemane, and you can see in the yellow there the path that Jesus took from the garden, being led to the house of the high priest Caiaphas, down through the valley. And as he was going through the valley, he would have seen these tombs of the prophets as he passed, and came up this path These stones are the very stones upon which Jesus must have walked on. It's the only path from the Mount of Olives here to the home of Caiaphas. Today, on the site of what was once the home of the high priest Caiaphas, stands the church called St. Peter in Gallicantu, which means literally St. Peter where the rooster sang. And it's called this because it was here that Peter denied Jesus 3 times, saying that he did not even know the man. He was so afraid seeing Jesus being led here bound to his trial that Peter denied knowing Jesus. And on the 3rd denial, he hears the rooster crowing in this courtyard right here outside the home of the high priest. And it was here in this home that Jesus went on trial. He was put to trial. They could find nothing substantial on which to convict him. Jesus said at one point, "Everything I've said publicly. I've been teaching in the temple and in the synagogues. What do you have to bring against me?" But then finally the high priest asked Jesus, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the living God?" To which Jesus answers, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God." At this, the high priest tears his robes and says, "What further need have we of witnesses?" Jesus then spends the night here, the night of Holy Thursday, in this pit. They lower him down and he hangs here the whole night long. I was able to spend about an hour in prayer sitting in this pit, this cistern where Jesus hung that night of Holy Thursday. It was just very powerful to be there where he was, suffering so much pain, feeling abandoned by his friends, just offering Jesus whatever consolation I could give. It's a good prayer for all of us to be there with Jesus at those moments when he felt alone, those moments such as the Garden of Gethsemane or his time here in this cistern, in this pit, in the basement of the home of the high priest Caiaphas. The next morning is Good Friday, when Jesus is led from the home of the high priest first to Herod and then to Pontius Pilate, where he is condemned to die. And after suffering the scourging at the pillar, being crowned with thorns, he takes up his cross and walks the Via del Rosa, the way of the cross, all the way up to the top of the hill Calvary, Golgotha. The skull is what that meant in Hebrew. And here now on the hill of Calvary is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Underneath this huge medieval church is both the hill of Calvary, on which Jesus died, as well as the garden in which Jesus was laid in a tomb. It says in John's Gospel that this garden was nearby, and they took him there because it was the Sabbath and they couldn't go very far. So he's taken to this tomb. This is the empty tomb. This is Calvary, both underneath one roof. And it's been one of the really beautiful things about staying here in Jerusalem, to be able to go each day to pray there at the foot of the cross. Just this morning I offered Mass on the altar of Mary, Mother of Sorrows, just as right where she stood when Jesus told her, "Behold your son," and to John, "Behold your mother." Tomorrow morning, bright and early, I will be celebrating a Mass in the tomb, in the empty tomb. And tonight, I plan to spend the entire night, this is my last night here before flying home, so I'm going to spend the entire night in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So I'm really looking forward to that experience of being able to stay awake with Jesus, to be with him in those moments of suffering on the cross, as well as in the time of joy at his resurrection. Here, throughout the Holy Land, every time that you celebrate Mass at a particular place, you celebrate the Mass that is associated with that place. And I mentioned this in one of my earlier videos. But so here at the tomb, it is always Easter. I was able to celebrate an Easter Mass here with the bishop, the patriarch here in Jerusalem, Pierre Battista, for the repose of the soul of Pope Benedict XVI. It was a beautiful Requiem Mass. And in the course of my time here, I met a brother Joseph Mary, and for him it is Easter every day.
And we are so happy that here every day is Easter. You cannot even imagine.
Yes, if any of you have seen the movie Groundhog Day, that is this man's life.
It's the same here, but here it's
same day over and over.
Yeah, but here it's every 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Not every day.
Every 30 minutes there's another Mass celebrating Easter.
Just also dope, I guess.
And so there you have it. This is Jerusalem. I'm sorry that by now the video has probably gone on for quite some time. But I wanted to stitch this all together because it really is one story, this story of Jerusalem. And as I went through these places, I didn't really want to record videos. I wanted to spend time in prayer. So I took a few pictures, took a few short video clips, and then sort of strung them together here in this video for you guys. And just a few final thoughts here on the Holy Land before I head home tomorrow. It's been such a blessing to be here in the Holy Land, and so I'm very grateful for the donors, those who made this trip possible, who gave money to the seminary. This is my seminary trip, delayed twice, but finally taking the seminary trip here. Just such a beautiful time here in the land where Jesus walked. Something that it's really brought home is just the reality of the incarnation, that God came down for him from heaven, for us men and for our salvation, as we say in the Creed, that he entered into the messiness that is our world. And as beautiful as this city is, it's a bustling, busy city, and it was no different in the time of Jesus. Parts of the city are messy. Even parts of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre are messy. Sadly, there's division even in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. There's certain times of the days when we as Catholics are able to pray there at the tomb, other times when it's reserved for the Greek Orthodox or the Armenians. There's a messiness there, and that is not something that Jesus desires. He doesn't desire the disunity, but he does desire to enter into the messiness of our lives, to be a constant presence to us, even in times of great trial and difficulty, going all the way, becoming like us in all things but sin, taking on a human body, taking on human suffering, human emotions, going all the way to the cross, so that through his death he might conquer death, and through his resurrection bring us each to the joy of our own resurrection. We look forward to the day when we will rise with him. And so being here, seeing this tomb empty, this is an empty tomb. Jesus has truly risen from the dead. And when we say yes to him, when we follow in his footsteps, when we obey his commandments, we have life within us, and we too will rise on the last day. So thank you all for following me in this journey to the Holy Land, and I look forward to seeing you soon. God bless you all.